I'm going to be vomiting all the way from here to the finish.
The weather forecast the way it is, I think we're going to be too scared to be seasick.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the Adventure Show. This month we've come to the beautiful west coast of Scotland for a race that's been described as the ultimate challenge for sailor and runner, the Scottish Islands Peaks Race.
There's no question about it. If you get this wrong, you die.
It is a wonderful, wonderful location for an event. But I have to say I had had a couple of pints when they asked me again.
So I think it's one of the most amazing races you can take part in. You know, the huge physical challenge of the hills, but also the sailing, which a lot of us runners are not all that experienced with.
There's no doubt about it. This is an epic challenge with over 60 miles of running and 160 nautical miles through some of Scotland's most treacherous waters. And Desiree will be on board with one of the teams. I just hope she knows what she's letting herself in for and has her seasickness tablets.
I don't really know how to look after myself in this environment. I've never really liked the idea of being out in open water when it's rough, and I think I've always been a little bit scared of big open seas.
And this is where I'm going to be spending the next 3 days. I'm going for the fast and furious approach on a rib, so I can be right at the heart of the action.
Also in this month's Adventure Show, we're staying on the water with an intrepid pair of kayakers. Follow our exclusive footage as they attempt to become the first people to paddle from Scotland to the Faeroe Islands.
You're always aware of how pathetic a human is against the elements, and in a boat you really feel it.
And we'll be back on dry land with Cameron McNeish for his monthly expedition into the hills. But first, to the Scottish Islands Peaks Race. It's been held for the last 26 years, an innovative pairing of sailing and running, where for up to 4 days, teams take part in a non-stop race, battling tides and wild weather.
You spend all year in the office, working away at the desk, and you come out here and it's just a brilliant antidote for work.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah?
We did it last year, but it was a lot nicer. It was sunny.
Coming back down through from Mull, it could be an interesting one with the wind on the nose, but we'll see.
The race begins in Oban with a 5-mile hill run before the crew sail to the first of the 3 islands, Mull. Once on dry land, there's a 24-mile sprint, if that's the right word, over the island's highest mountain, Ben More. Then they're off to Jura with the runners taking in all the summits of the Paps, and it's not over yet. They have to cross the infamous Mull of Kintyre to Arran and a final run up Goat Fell. Finally, using the last reserves of stamina, the boats race for the finish line in Troon. This year, 48 teams of sailors and runners are taking on this monumental challenge.
As runners, we get to be in a lovely boat in a lovely part of Scotland, sailing down. It's just unfortunate we have to endure a bit of pain and 60 miles of effort in between to get the pleasure. We have to endure the pain first of all.
All that's to come. Right now the runners are waiting to start. And right at the front are the runners from the boat Scrabble, Henry Blake and Alex Keith, who Desiree is joining for the race.
Right, a minute to go. Enjoy yourselves and make sure she doesn't sleep.
Don't worry.
It's a matter of seconds before the start of the Islands Peaks Race 2009. You can feel the tension in the air. And there they go. And there they go. It could be 2 days, could be 3 days. More likely for some of them, it's going to be 4 days running. First of all here in Oban, then off to 3 separate islands and finishing in Troon sometime on Sunday or maybe Monday for some of them. It's going to be a long weekend.
Yeah, we're doing well.
The runners start up the steep Haggart's Brae before heading onto the cliffs. The aim is to make sure that all 48 boats don't set sail together, but there's a clear advantage for the first vessels to leave harbour, so the pressure's on the runners from the very start. Taking an early lead are the Simmons brothers from one of the smaller boats, Calypso. And close behind them are Ray Ward and Donald Naylor from the large catamaran Obedient. Pressure or not, with views like these, everyone's enjoying themselves.
Get deep for it. The deep sea skybirds.
And it's all action here in the harbour too as the sailors jockey for position. And Desiree's now in the thick of it on board her boat, Scrabble.
So there she is, sitting out there. You see, sitting down on her boat, waiting for the runners to go back. And she's probably sipping a gin and tonic as we speak.
Welcome below deck on Scrabble. Let me give you a quick tour. This is the galley, and we've got a great little stove here, which is actually sways back and forth. And then this is the bunks for the runners. This is a 4-bedroom apartment. And the other end of the boat is my ensuite bathroom. And last but not least is my bedroom. Literally a cupboard. I think I've definitely got the better option than DB this time around.
Well, we'll see about that. First back from the run are Joe and Andrew Simmons, the runners from Calypso. But Desiree's not had to wait long either. Scrabble's runners are the 4th team back, which means they should be away well before the main pack. But already, the leading boats are starting to move.
Runners have to get on the boat quickly. Now, pretty slick start. Make sure the oars come off. You do not want to be leaving them behind. Now that's impressive. Calypso off to a flying start, and she's first off the mooring and off into the race. Some of the bigger boats getting the jib up, getting the wind out in the sails and getting some pace. Very impressive yacht. Oh, be careful. Oh, almost a collision there. So Tangle of the Isles and Paul 8, number 38 and 30, really going nice and tight. Of course, they're going to have to go backwards across the start line before heading out onto the course proper. And there's what happens. Straight away, Calypso first away from Oban has been overtaken, and immediately the bigger boats with the bigger sails absolutely flying past. Take the wind as well. Number 32, Scotia Handling Services. In the youth class, Alistair Mull, the skipper, the team at Lomond School and the High School of Glasgow. This is number 18, Lark. Again in the youth section, Tobermory High School. Well, they'll be sailing up to Salon, round past Tobermory, but they'll know these waters pretty well, certainly to sound them all anyway. And here was the first boat away, Calypso, number 8. Mind yourself, boys, right behind you. Number 26, Obedient, catamaran, 13.7 metres. Obedient keeping nice and close behind. And that's just a mighty sight as the teams to the wind. And where, oh where, oh where is Scrabble and Desiree?
We seem to have a problem with the main sail, so we're running on one sail at the moment. All the boats that have got both sails up are obviously steaming ahead of us just now, so the guys are working really hard to try and fix it, but I don't know. Don't know if it's going to work.
Should we get a bit more halyard tension on the jib to get rid of those nasty creases?
No, this is a problem. This is a big problem. What's going on here?
We'll see all the rest of the fleet passes while we struggle with this main.
Now, what have they done? Are they going to hit the corner there? Hit the headland at the corner? They have to come wider than that. Going backwards, they've made a bit of a mess of that. What's going on?
Oh goodness, there's boats everywhere. I looked round and there's a huge big boat. It looked like it was just about to hit us.
Keep coming.
Now, I wonder if they've lost a piece of steering equipment, because they seem to be all over the place.
This has confused everybody.
That's a very Why don't you sail in behind them?
I can't do a thing at the moment. We have no wind. One sail in not a very good position.
No steering!
Maybe they've fouled something, a line on the rudder or something, who knows, but certainly they're not particularly happy at the moment.
Mainsail's jammed.
On top of all the problems that we've had so far getting out of the bay, there's now a huge ferry making its way straight for us. I'm just a bit worried about the wash.
That problem with the mainsail has cost Scrabble valuable time. They're now right at the back of the field, having had to watch most of the boats making a slick exit from the harbour. But with the mainsail fixed, they're underway at last.
Okay, are you ready for going down?
Well, we've done a good job there, with the runners having made an excellent start and got ourselves to 4th place, and the sailors have taken us firmly down to last place now. And we're feeling quite confident in our position here.
You can feel straight away how fast we're going now. The difference is just instantaneous from having us sail out to full capacity. It's just fantastic. We're just flying past this other boat now, which is good. It means we're not last anymore.
We're back in the race now. All we've got to do now is catch another 47 boats. 46. We've just passed one boat, so that's 46 now to go.
Embarrassingly, it's Scrabble skipper Curly Mills. 26 years ago, he came up with the idea of the race and has taken part in every one since. So he's an expert on the hazards of the race and what can go wrong.
It always poses unexpected problems. No matter how long you've been sailing, there's usually something happens which is completely unexpected. So it's a constant challenge, really.
And quite unusual for a group of sailors to be on a boat and also have a couple of runners here as well.
It's interesting because it's mixing two different disciplines, and they can see what we do and we can see what they do. And in fact, by doing this over the years, 1 or 2 sailors have become runners and 1 or 2 runners have become sailors. One time, we used to do this race with the objective of finishing as fast as possible, to win, and now we've realised that as you get towards the finish, you suddenly think, oh, it's nearly over. It's another year to wait before we can do it again.
But up with the front runners, there's no doubting the competitive nature of these leading teams.
So we're now an hour and 45 minutes into the race. Number 32 still well out in front, Scotia Handling Services. Boat handled by Lomond School and the High School of Glasgow, and everything looking pretty comfortable and confident in this boat.
Easy to look good and get away early, if you're away early. If you're in amongst the melee, it's a lot more difficult. I've done it 10 times before, and it's always been with youth teams. And with the 2 training weekends that we do and the race, the guys that I shake hands with at the end of the race, absolutely exhausted with glazed eyes, I shake their hands and they have grown 2-3 inches in a very short space of time.
With 2 hours of the race gone, blazing the trail neck and neck with the youth team Scotia Handling Services is number 26, the big catamaran Obedient. There are a number of separate categories based on boat size. There are teams where the sailors amazingly also do the running, and there's also a youth class. But whatever class you're racing in and whatever your ability, there's one thing everyone agrees about.
It's very friendly. I think it's a great team event, and I think there are a lot of great people here. And of course the challenge is really for the smaller boats and the less professional runners who spend a lot of time in the mountains. And it's really a tough race for everybody, but to see people at all levels competing shoulder to shoulder, it's great, and I think it inspires a lot of people with the sports, both sports, sailing and running.
And we'll be back with the action here on both land and sea shortly. Right now we're staying on the water as we join 2 kayakers as they prepare for an incredible journey, attempting to be the first people to paddle from Scotland to the Faeroe Islands. Patrick Winterton and Mick Berwick are both remarkable people. Patrick's an ex-Olympic skier who served for 9 years as a Marine, while back in the late 80s, Mick was one of our top canoe slalom racers. Now they're about to tackle an even bigger challenge. They're attempting to paddle 180 nautical miles across the high seas and into the record books. For 3 days they'll have no sight of land. They'll have to do everything on board, sleep, cook and contend with all that the sea can throw at them. Last year their first attempt ended on the tiny island of North Rona when they became ill. This time they're determined to succeed, but you don't just set off on a trip like this. It takes months of planning and preparation, including a visit to the RNLI training college at Poole to make sure their survival skills are up to scratch.
We've been issued with seasickness bags and advised to take seasickness pills. I think that means it's going to be rough.
It's the most incredible facility, a largish swimming pool that looks as though it's only half full when you arrive, but they've got this ability of creating 1.5 metre high waves actually in the swimming pool. Not only that, they can add the sound effects with playing the sound of a storm, which is pretty frightening. Then they can black the room out so you get the full Force 10 effect as you're in there in the life raft. And it's a very good simulation as to what might happen.
Who's got the torch?
Torch is in the other bag. Where's the other bag? Throughout the day we were introduced to a huge amount of equipment, much of which I carry in my boat, but I was embarrassed to say that I was useless at actually activating it, because it's very seldom you get your flares or your EPIRB out. And it just highlighted the importance of being familiar with the equipment you're carrying. Otherwise, there's no point in having it with you at all.
Starting in Stornoway, the duo will paddle a short leg up the coast to the butt of Lewis. From here, it's a 50-mile kayak to the uninhabited island of North Rona and their final hours on dry land. Then it's northwards for 3 days across the remote waters of the North Atlantic. 3 days entirely alone and a long, long way from rescue. Right now, with just 4 weeks before departure, the pair head to Skye for the final test of all their gear.
It's not been done before, and I want to do it. I want to do something that no one's ever done before. This is our last big test, really. We don't really want to exert ourselves as much as this again before we go. So this is the big test to see whether all the work we've done over the last year or more has actually paid off.
What we've got now is a small sort of geodesic tent that fits over the body and clips around the cockpit. Part of the enjoyment of it is you get all these puzzles and all these conundrums that you have to solve before you can even think of going out there.
I think it'll be really good. It's very warm in there. Personally, I want a big window in it. I want to be able to open my eyes and look out, which is one of the big problems for me.
This one. Go on.
Yeah, get the fire going.
By the minute we're discovering problems that we would have, and the strength of certain materials, clips that aren't strong enough, systems that take too long if you're thinking you're out in a Force 8, and that's the whole point of being here. If we didn't discover anything, I think I'd be more concerned than we are by the fact that things are going slightly wrong.
I like desolation. If I'm hiking, I like to go somewhere where there's no people. So in the sea, crossings are the way to go. So I only started sea kayaking about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. Before that it was all slalom and river running. The whole thing about sea kayaking is that you can get to places that a lot of people just don't see.
Four weeks later and the pair have travelled to Lewis, but there's still lots to sort out.
It seems ridiculous that even with 24 hours to go we're still sticking homemade things onto our boat.
That's brilliant. I've tried it on the canal and it's okay. The canal was very flat.
Holy moly, Mick, my water! Hey. Well, the advantage of mine is I can actually cook over the side of the boat and out of harm's way. We've got an agreement as to what happens if he puts a hole in his boat, and it's each for themselves. This is the first time that an OS map is no use at all, because there aren't any grids out in the middle. So it's going to have to be long lat, but luckily Mick always works in long lat, so he'll know where we are. I won't have a clue.
How do I feel? It's 23 minutes past 4. I've got a cup of tea, so things aren't all bad. Didn't get the best night's sleep, I must admit. It's been quite hot and muggy here, which is also quite unusual. But ready to go. Be nice to get out to Rona.
Yeah, it's starting to kick in now. The reality of it is starting to sort of play on our minds a bit. It looks as though we've got 2 good days, followed by
northerly winds up to 5, 6. I mean, I think that would probably be the prediction for the third and final day, which is when you want the good day. We'd rather set off in a 5 and 6 and have 2 good days to finish. But you can't order your own weather.
And this is it, the start of Patrick and Mick's journey. And this really is a journey into the unknown. And we'll be back later to find out just how they get on. But we're back on dry land for just a short while. We're joining Cameron McNeish as he's picked a perfect day for his monthly expedition into the hills.
There's a certain bend on the A82 Glasgow to Fort William Road, and when you drive round that bend, your breath is taken away by the view in front of you. A great wedge of rock uprears from the flatness of the Rannoch Moor, and more often than not it still has its head in the clouds. This is the Buachaille Moor, the great shepherd of Glen Etive, and today I'm going to climb it. The Buachaile's traditionally been known as a climber's mountain, but today we're taking the easy route up, we're taking the hill walker's route. I reckon most climbers in Scotland will probably think of the Buachaille Moor as an old friend. I know I started coming here as a teenager and spent weekend after weekend exploring the mountain, climbing some of the easiest scrambling routes like Curve Ridge or Dee Gully Buttress, and then progressing to some of the easier rock climbs like January Jigsaw or Agag's Groove on the Rannoch Wall. Fabulous exposed climbs, but relatively easy, nice big holds. But I think if this mountain really belongs to anyone, I think if you had to put a name to this mountain, it would be that of the great writer and mountaineer W.H. Murray, Bill Murray. He did so much here, he climbed so many of the routes, mostly pre-war, and then wrote some wonderful books about climbing here and on Ben Nevis. Books like Mountaineering in Scotland and Undiscovered Scotland. And I remember some years ago, not long before he died, having a discussion with Bill, and he chided me very gently for publicising the mountains through television programmes and magazines that I was editing at the time. He said I was encouraging too many people to climb the hills and the mountains were becoming overcrowded. And then later on, over a cup of tea, he asked me how I got involved in the mountains, what inspired me to go to the mountains. And I said with a smile, "Your books, Bill." It's about 20 years since I've come up this route and through Corrin a Trulach on the Buachaille, and I'm amazed in that time how eroded it's become. I guess it just shows how popular this hill is. Although I've been suggesting that the Buachaille Moor is a big friendly hill, its character can change quite dramatically in certain conditions. Last year, 3 people were killed in an avalanche at the head of the corrie here. And it is really quite a notorious avalanche spot, so if you're coming up here in winter, take care. I think partially because you can see Buachaille Moor from the A82 Glasgow to Fort William Road that it's very familiar to a lot of people, especially a lot of people who don't even climb mountains, because it is that characteristic mountain shape. It rises to a peak, to a summit, and it really is that fabulous shape that draws people's attention. Not only the fabulous shape, but also the fact that it's almost entirely composed of rock. You'll see very few trees on the Buachaille Moor, you'll see very little heather and certainly very little grass. So it looks like the mountaineer's mountain. Oop. The summit slopes of the Buachaille are pretty bare and rocky, as you can see, and not very much vegetation about. So I think it's sometimes quite good to remember that not everybody has seen the Buachaille as a mountain of natural beauty. Way back in 1792, a resident at the King's House Hotel described the mountain as a peeling carcass, hideously disgustful. And Charles Dickens, when he did his grand tour of the Highlands, bearing in mind that he was essentially a city man, described it as the sort of place that you'd come upon when you're deranged in the height of a fever. Dorothy Wordsworth, sister of the Cumbrian poet William Wordsworth, she was slightly more impressed, I think. She described it as black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct upreared its head. Now, I'm not all that sure what she meant by that, but I think she was a bit overawed. Well, here we are, the summit cairn. And you know, I can't think of another mountaintop in Scotland with such a sense of spaciousness. It's like looking down on a void. And it's just incredible here. It's like almost like being in an airplane. The straight road of the A82 and some of the little tracks that twist there. And we're looking right across this huge expanse of the Rannoch Moor, right away across to the wall of Rannoch, the hills of Glenlochy, and Schiehallion away in the far distance, just rising up beyond Loch Rannoch. It's wonderful. And away there beyond the Blackwater Reservoir, Ben Alder, the Grey Corries, the Mamors, and the King of Scottish Mountains, Ben Nevis, just right across it. You know, it's almost close enough you could touch it. It's fantastic. And then closer at hand, these magnificent mountains of Glencoe. What a place this is. It's fantastic.
Welcome back to the Scottish Islands Peaks Race, where the leading boats are approaching Mull. Now it's time to get the runners into the dinghies and onto dry land.
You've got a bit of excitement arriving here because it's the first long event that you've taken part in, and everyone's very keen and desperate to get going. You can arrive very jelly-legged on land here, and it's quite hard then to get yourself up and running.
And right now, out in the lead, it's still the school's boat, Scotia Handling Services.
Scotia Handling Services, Lowman School and High School of Glasgow. First boat ashore.
And close behind them are the runners from the Catamaran Obedient.
What number is your team, please? Number 26. I'm in now. Aha. How are you? Oh. Donald, Naylor, and Ward. Very Ward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Get your kit checked.
There's a 5-minute time out for this kit check, essential to ensure that no one's going into the hills unprepared. But the pressure's on to get off quickly.
So you've got your map? Yeah. Okay. So you've got
waterproof top, bottoms, head torch.
Yeah, that's your survival bag and
Your poly bag in there somewhere.
How was the crossing?
It's really good actually. Much better than expected. I've been seasick in a couple of our practice runs, so you might not want to film this. But
Lovely boat.
Yeah.
It's a very smart boat we're in now. It's the height of luxury. Good one, boys. Go on. Rein it in.
6 teams have entered the youth class, and their run on Mull follows a lower route, one which avoids the summit of Ben More. And there's a word of warning for the leading senior team, Obedient. Today the weather on the summit of this Munro is wild.
I would watch it on the ridge on the way up Mull, because the wind will be blowing you towards the cliff. So.
50 miles an hour on the summit, growing us towards the cliffs.
3, 2, 1, go! Have a good one!
And as the runners head into the hills, it's time for the crew from Obedient to reflect on progress.
See you later. See ya.
One of the runners has done this before. He reckons they'll be off within 4 hours. I think they'll have the bit between their teeth because they see there's a chance of doing quite well.
Yeah, well, certainly you've had a great start. So what is it about this race that makes you come to this?
Just great fun. Great fun. There's a bit of a challenge, and there's a bit for sailing and runners as well. My brother's been doing this for about 20 years, and we got a family job, if you like, and his son and myself are the sailors.
And also the runners as well, they can help you, they can help your time certainly, because if you get away, big difference of it.
They do, but it's a long race, so and there are big tidal gates, so yes, it all adds up, but you can come from behind in these races and do quite well.
And it's Obedience runners Ray Ward and Donald Naylor who are first to the summit of Ben More.
Where do you go up here then, Don? Right, this is where we don't go off, we don't use a compass.
How far behind are the next lodge?
If you could tell us, that would be great. No idea.
Get down! Where are we?
This way.
Back on the water, most of the boats are now arriving on Mull, all of them determined to get their runners away as quickly as possible.
Oh, look at that. Now that's what I'm called getting the boys off quickly, but there's one still there. Now that was a pretty impressive changeover. Quite a scary thought, the yacht bearing down on top of you. Have you seen us was the shout. And there's Calypso, that was the first boat out of Oban. A great, great start. The runners are obviously pretty fast, but the boat itself isn't as fast as some of the other yachts with a massive sail area. But a good run up Ben Moor can up the times and make things a whole lot easier for the crew on the boat.
Calypso's sailors are old hands. This is their 20th Islands Peaks race, but their runners Joe and Andrew Simmons are comparative newcomers.
One of our runners I interviewed for medical school.
That's why he got accepted.
And he had put fell running down on his interests, and he had a famous father, first person to run over all Scottish Munros, and running between them as well. So he got into medical school, and I happened to be giving a talk to the first year students 3 days before the race was due to start, and one of our runners had had a death in the family, had dropped out. So I was able to say, "Is Simmons in the room? Come and see me afterwards." And a hand went up.
And he's one of your
And
runners?
he's been running ever since.
2 here. A bit misty on the top, a little bit breezy, but pretty dry. Good.
Believe it or not, these top runners enjoy these conditions. Some are actually more concerned about our camera team.
It must be freezing up here. These guys are looking after me well though.
Oh, you're going down now. Thank you.
There's no easy way up. But this is the big one out of the way.
You know, there's something mad about it, but you know, it's great when you're finished. You know, I just love to finish. I hate starting, but I just love to finish.
And there's good news for Scrabble and Desiree. They've had a good crossing and they've pulled up 5 places, but that still means there are 42 boats ahead of them.
Runners are getting ready to get off the boat and do their first hill run, and the crew are discussing tactics for the fastest way to get them off the boat.
We'll run off really quickly until we are out of sight of the boat, and then we're just going to start walking. Yeah.
And eat more cake.
Eat a bit more cake.
Yeah.
That's right. Something we shouldn't really tell the sailors about what really goes on the land.
We're just sticking to our race plan so far. Run as fast as we can.
Scrabble 33, go! Scrabble, oh, we're gone.
First back from their shorter run are the boys from the joint team of Lomond School and the High School of Glasgow.
Hey! 32! Well done, guys!
Now, it's a quick transition to their boat.
Amazing views though.
Oh yeah, amazing views
right
everywhere.
up to the mountains of Rome and out to the west and down to the centre thing. Brilliant run, well done the guys.
First back for the seniors are the Simmons brothers from Calypso with an impressive time of 3 hours 18 minutes. With a boat in the smallest class, they were the 14th to arrive on Mull, so they must have flown over Ben Moor. Yes! That is a superb run by these guys.
We are 20 minutes ahead of schedule. It's good conditions, really dry. So fast running, especially coming off the hill.
Setting off an hour after the Calypso team, Alex Keith and Henry Blake from Scrabble are still out on the hill.
It's now about 8 o'clock. Runners have been out for around 4 hours now. Weather's turned miserable. It's really rainy. We're hoping they're going to be back quite soon, so we're just sending Barry back onto shore in the dinghy to hopefully pick them up and bring them back here, hopefully within the next half hour or so.
Well done, well done. We might have to put Henry down now, actually.
Dead animal. Struggled a bit on the road, last section. Not too bad. Alec kept me going. Good teamwork. In the form that he carried me for about 4 miles. On his back, like a horse. See you later. Cheers. Cheers.
See you on Jura.
Well done. I think I'm just really impressed. I can't believe we made it back so quickly. We've left a load of boats behind in the harbour now, so we've picked up quite a lot of time, which is really good.
It's just nice to feel that we're sort of back in the middle of the race again, because obviously being off the back of the field makes you feel a little bit like you're not really involved properly. But yeah, it's nice to be back in the mix again. Hopefully the sailors will pick up a few places overnight as well.
Things are getting better for the Scrabble team, and with a time of 3 hours 49 minutes, Alex and Henry were the second quickest team on the hill, just beaten by the Simmons brothers from Calypso. And that means Scrabble have moved right up the field. From leaving Oban in last place, they're now sitting in 9th. A good sail tonight could see them as one of the front runners. But for skipper Curly Mills, this race is about far more than just winning.
We're going downwind. Whoop.
9 years ago, a bad cycling accident left him with a fractured skull and resulted in brain damage.
What I didn't realise until I fell off my bike is that if you change your brain, you change the person, because you think of your brain as something like an arm that you use. It is something you use, but you don't realise that that's where you are. It's not like an arm, it's you. Brain damage also, in my case, means you lose a lot of memory capacity, so that makes a few difficulties. But the message I'd like to get across is that it changes you, but in a sense that means you've lived two lives. You've lived the life before brain damage, when you were person A, and then after brain damage, your person B is a bit different. So you sort of live two lives, which is a very lucky thing to do. Most people only have one. And the other thing is, the important message to get across is that the brain's got fantastic ability to rewire itself, so that you lose some connections, but you can rewire with different connections. It takes time, a couple of years or something like that, but you rewire and you can become perfectly happy in your new persona.
Back with the race leaders, and it's still the school's boat, Scotia Handling Services, out in front, and they're making fantastic time heading down the Sound of Mull. This is where team tactics come in. If your runners are fast enough and you get away early, you can make it down this stretch before the tide turns. It's around 60 nautical miles from Mull to Jura, and the fastest boats expect to complete this leg in about 8.5 hours. It's a long and lonely sail through the night. First to land are Scotia Handling Services, with Obedient close behind.
Okay, I'll get the pictures, Bob. Yeah. Let's go. Okay, guys. Nice sailing, guys. Alright. Okay. Are you okay with that, yeah? Go for it. You're running again!
But up with the leaders is one of the smaller boats, Buachaille. It's been a tense night for the sailing crew.
At the top of Jura there, it's pretty scary. It was just purely on instruments. We couldn't see anything. It was raining at the time and it was pitch black, so we were just working on the lights and instruments and the depth, and it was just... I'm glad we had our GPS, that's for sure.
We're taking a short break from the Scottish Islands Peaks race as they battle through the night. We're rejoining Patrick Winterton and Mick Berwick as they attempt to enter the record books by kayaking from the Isle of Lewis to the Faroes. And this is it. Patrick and Mick are now off the coast of Lewis, heading towards the island of North Rona, where there's a final chance to savour dry land. But already, the seriousness of their undertaking is clear.
The Bud of Lewis to North Rona was the penultimate leg. It wasn't what we'd been thinking about for the previous 10 months, or 10 years actually. And we'd done it before, and I think we were a bit blasé about it. We were very relaxed. It's still a 50-mile paddle, but everything, all our thoughts were geared towards the following few days, and were we going to get that weather window to actually go from North Rona to the Faroes?
The mental side of it's the hardest thing to do. I've trained most of my life, so physically I'm quite fit. This is probably the most I've tested my mental powers.
I'm not so nervous at the moment. I think I've done all of that.
I think we've just got to stay positive as long as we can and try and enjoy it.
Nearly there, Mick.
Right.
Just arrived on North Rona, and we wanted to have a day or two's rest after 2 pretty tough days, but it looks as though there might be a 3-day weather window, and if that's the case, we're going to have to summon some energy for somewhere and start it off. It's not ideal to start the longest trip of your life exhausted, but we may not have a choice.
It's been 2 long days, I'm not saying necessarily hard, but they've been long, especially today. And well, I don't recover like I used to. So
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Mick and I spending our first night together. It's great, Mick. Never thought it would be anything like this.
Neither did I. I thought you wouldn't talk so much.
Weather check first thing in the morning, and then we'll make a decision. But we'll be semi-ready. I don't think we've been ready at any stage, but we'll be semi-ready to go.
Right, can I go to sleep now, Patrick? I'm very tired. I'm gone.
North Rona was interesting. Before any big expedition, you get nervous, and the mouth goes dry, and your stomach feels completely empty. And that really only hit us when we made the decision to go, which was only an hour and a half before we left, because it was all dependent on the weather. It was a beautifully clear day, and North Rona, it didn't disappear fast enough, you know, because it's always an indication of how far you've got. And it was very exciting because it's something that neither of us had done. We've both paddled overnight, we've both paddled a long way, but neither of us had committed to a distance like this.
Mentally, I guess that'll be the biggest test. You know, for 3 days, potentially up to 3 nights, we're just going to be sitting in a boat, moving our arms.
Life becomes incredibly simple. It is solely about surviving, and all you've got to do is go through your routines. We perceived we had a few dangers. One was injury, one was sickness, one was getting lost, one was getting hit by the shipping. So those were the only 4 things we had to think about. Forget the mortgage, forget the tax man, forget all that, and you're completely in a different world.
They're now over 50 miles from any land, but in today's world, it's hard to be completely out of touch.
Patrick, hello, it's Simon. Can you hear me? I'm recording the conversation for posterity.
I've got you loud and clear. We're fine. We're obviously pretty tired. You know, we get wet a few times, but at least it's warm. The biggest concern is the speed that has dropped right down. You know, to start with, we were going at 3.5, 4 knots, and now we're down to 2. You can't afford to be dangerously tired when we approach the coast.
Mick and I both come from a competitive background. He was a really good slalom paddler, and my racing career was in cross-country skiing. Both pretty tough sports. And I don't think either of us really got out of the competitive element. You know, we'd sort of agreed to race the last 500 metres, but all the way across, when the other guy's feeling good and moving well, you feel worse than you otherwise would do if you were on your own. And vice versa, when you're feeling good and the other guy's feeling weak, you feel fantastic. And we found the role just kept switching.
First few days were really good, nice, good days, good weather, so that was all happy days. And then, of course, the tiredness starts to set in, the aches and pains start, the doubts as to whether you'll make it, and whether the weather's going to get bad and stuff like that.
As we got closer to the Faroes, the mist came in and it got thicker and thicker, and it was like vertical ice walls on either side. And this is where the hallucinations came in, and I had the Faroes cliffs on one side, which weren't actually there, and on the other side I had a massive great redwood forest. And for 5 or 6 hours I was just going up this channel, and every now and again a thunderball would come down the middle and I'd find myself ducking and sort of weaving and then go, wake up, you know, and Mick was going through exactly the same. And that's partly fatigue, partly dehydration, probably partly excitement as well, but it just, I've never experienced that before, and it was fantastic. We met a fisherman, Eilif Poulsen was his name, and he came over, pulled up his nets, came over to us and said, you're from Scotland, welcome to the Faroes, I'm going to give you an escort into land. It was fantastic. There we were, landing in a little cove miles from anywhere, and people just appeared over the top of the cliffs and down into the cove. Just fantastic. And it was so nice to go somewhere where they appreciate that sort of sense of adventure. And we'd told no one we were coming, and they just appeared out of nowhere.
Thanks for everyone here for coming down. It's been great, as we expected to just, you know, land somewhere and do what we'd normally do, but this is absolutely tremendous. It's very good of everybody to be here.
So, don't let anyone kid you there are no great adventures left. Our congratulations from everyone on the Adventure Show to Mick Berwick and Patrick Winterton. So lads, what are you planning for an encore? Now back at the Scottish Islands Peaks race, where the fastest youth team is just finishing their Jura run. Again, it's one that takes a lower course over the hills. Now they're ready for the next sailing stage of the race.
Well done, boys! Well done, guys, that was good.
Meanwhile, up on the Paps, most teams are pressing on and up into the mist, including Desiree's teammates Henry Blake and Alex Keith.
Well, we're sort of blundering around a bit, really.
Bit hit and miss today.
We've climbed the wrong hill briefly, and we've been to a different loch here, which was not really on the schedule, but still heading in the right direction. We're still smiling. And I can't really blame the conditions, because navigational error is human error, so that's me. I've already fessed up, told Henry I blew it by making him climb an extra hill. It wasn't a very big hill, really.
Big enough. For me, it's turning into a bit of a survival mission.
With dangerous cliffs and unstable boulders, correct navigation over these summits is important. But Alex isn't the only one to get things wrong.
Made a little mistake earlier on, took in an extra peak, but there you go. All part of the fun. We'll follow the rest of the guys now, if that's okay. You use whatever navigation tools you can have.
As the day progresses, the weather clears.
You get a prize now.
But this isn't all good news, as it looks like the wind is going to cause serious problems for the next sailing leg.
Worst bit's going to be around the Mull entire sailing, I think, with these force gales.
Force 9 coming in tonight, so we're going to try and get a move on.
We'll see.
And Scrabble's runners have certainly pushed on quickly. Despite their navigational error, they're again the second fastest on this section, completing the run in just 4 hours and 10 minutes.
Well done, guys. How are you doing?
Not bad, that was alright.
Good effort.
Slow.
How are you feeling? Alright, yeah.
We are stuffed.
Oh, good effort. The kettle's on for you.
That's what we wanted to do.
You guys did a fantastic time, eh?
I think I may retire tonight.
Oh.
And as Desiree and the crew of Scrabble head out of the harbour, it's clear the forecasts are right. They're going to be in for a rough trip.
Excuse me. Did you get past it?
Oh, I'm sure everything's totally fine, but it doesn't feel like it. Oh, just feels like we're going to capsize any second. Oh my goodness. Oh, oh, this is horrible.
By now, 38 boats are back at sea, all struggling with the extreme weather. But those out in the lead have hit this notorious stretch of water before the turn of the tide. Conditions are still dangerous, but at least the leading boats have the tide in their favour. But they're still up against a force 8 gale. Behind them, the teams who failed to catch the tide are in for a tough time, and that includes our boat, Scrabble.
Need more power. We need more power. 5.8 knots.
The problem for me was that it came on so quickly. It seemed we were on the boat and within 30 seconds there was, we were up and down like nothing else. So didn't have much a chance to catch breath or eat or drink, did we? Yeah. So it was just straight off the run and lie down.
Oh, I don't like this at all. Oh goodness. I get really nervous when it feels like the boat's upending, because I know that we're in some quite big seas. Kind of wishing we were on flat land at the moment. Fine up on deck until 20 minutes ago, and it just feels really rough now. It just feels like the boat's keying quite a lot. The thought of being on here for another 15 hours, if it's like this, is really filling me with too much pleasure.
I think it was reasonable for it to feel dreadful because it was awful. We've all been around the Mull several times, and it's probably the worst weather that we've had, I would say. Certainly the worst weather I've had going around the Mull. It was vile.
I think frustrating too, because we get such a nice run down from Craighouse and things were looking good, and we thought we might just catch the last of the tide, and this fabled tidal gate caught us in the end. So, but caught us in big time because it was really quite big seas and quite tough.
Tough enough to mean that 23 boats found the conditions just too much and were forced to retire from the race. Just a handful of boats made it through before the tide turned, and first to land on Arran are the youth team, Scotia Handling Services.
Given that I haven't had anything to throw up for the past hour and a half, 2 hours, it's been pretty ropey.
I had the same experience a few years ago.
But by all accounts, we actually got better weather than everyone else is getting going round the Mull, so I wouldn't fancy being them.
It was very bumpy. The overfalls, wind against tide at the Mull of Kintyre, was some very steep and very big waves that they're so steep that you had to bear off over the waves rather than going straight over them. So yeah, it was pretty horrendous.
Cheers, guys!
Second in is another youth team. They're from Tobermory High School in their boat Lark.
Good sail. Magic.
How was the crossing?
Superb. Fast. Gale force 8 coming around the corner.
And just a few minutes later, the runners from the large catamaran Obedient reach land.
I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah. I'm glad it's the last one. Nice we got to Troon in time for the pubs. There you guys.
On this final run, all the teams, senior and junior, follow the same course over Goat Fell. And still out in front are the youth runners from Scotia Handling Services.
How's it going?
Well, given that I'd been violently seasick in colours that I didn't know you could be sick since we'd been on Mull, and I hadn't eaten anything solid till we got on the island, not too bad.
It's now nearly 8 and one of the smaller boats, Buachaille, has just reached land, but not quite. There was an unexpected dip into the water for the runners.
Yeah, well, we were coming in quite fast, the boat was going fast, and then the dinghy the buoy dipped. Never used my life jacket and anchor before, so it works. That was a very rough crossing, but we were all okay. Paddy and the guys did an awesome job. The key was to get round before the tide changed. So if there's boats after us, they're gonna, instead of having the tide flushing them through, the tide's gonna be against them. So that was a very tough leg.
And up on Goat Fell, the conditions are also far from friendly. But the leading senior team, the runners from Obedient, are still smiling.
The prospect of the finish is spurring us on, I think. Dig in. Keep going. Yeah, keep going. Hopefully get back before it's too dark. See you later.
And the team from Tobermory High School are also enjoying this run.
The weather's excellent. So it's on our backs a little bit going down, coming up, and on our faces going down. That's great.
Good night, mate.
Back on board Scrabble, they've had to make their toughest decision. In the face of dangerous seas, they've had no choice but to quit the race and head for the mainland.
We couldn't get round the Mull of Kintyre, which we knew was going to be the most difficult section, and these guys have been battling for hours now. You really see how potentially serious this can be for people. It's just relentless. I'd give anything to be on dry land right now, absolutely anything. This is just one of the worst things I've ever experienced. It's awful. It's really awful.
But for the leading teams, this year's Scottish Islands Peaks race is almost over.
Here they come! Here they come!
After a relatively short sail from Arran to Troon, the fastest youth team, Scotia Handling Services, crosses the finishing line at 1 a.m.
Alistair, we spoke to you in Mull, you said you were in it to win it, and your first boat back, you must be delighted with that.
I didn't think I could ever beat multi-hulls. I never thought I could be first boat home, and it's a credit to those youngsters. One of them was comatose with sickness and lying horizontal, still being sick, 5 minutes before going to run Goatfell. He's a hero.
Next back and first to complete the adult course is the catamaran Obedient.
Well done! It's pretty special actually. It's the fourth time I've done it, and I think our skipper's had a second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth, I think, so far. So to add a first is yeah, brilliant.
And particularly in the conditions as well, because they were pretty challenging, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that's partly what made it for us though, because there's been a lot of retirals, and Obedience, big solid catamaran, and proud for it all. Feels like cheating really.
Just a few hours later and the sun's beginning to rise. Desiree is finally back from her ordeal.
I've just had the most amazing news because I thought we were in Lamlash, but it turns out we're actually in Troon. I'm just so relieved about that. I'm just so happy not to be rocked around in this boat anymore.
Yeah, but we failed in our principal mission, which was to complete the race. We retired at the Mull of Kintyre.
How do you feel about that?
Relieved.
Yeah, no, that was fine. That was absolutely fine.
It was a good decision, seaman-like decision, and we had to make it because the conditions at the Mull were just atrocious.
How does it feel like being here now with a beer, safe and sound?
The first beer of the day at 4:30 in the morning is
not a habit I'd like to promote generally, but I think under the circumstances, it quenches thirst better than a cup of tea.
I think Barry felt we deserved it, and I couldn't find reasons to disagree with him.
Some years the right word to describe the race is pleasure. Sometimes it's endurance, but this year the word was survival. All the boats returned unharmed, but of the 48 who started, just 15 finished the course. The fastest senior boat was Obedient from Class 1, who completed the race in 35 hours 48 minutes. The first Class 2 boat and the second senior to finish was Buachaille's in a time of 40 hours. But special congratulations to those intrepid youth teams. The local boat Lark came in second with 36 hours and 50 minutes, while Scotia Handling Services was the first and fastest boat overall, with an impressive time of 35 hours 11 minutes. And that's it from this very wet and very wild adventure show. Next time we're back in the hills for an epic 95-mile race up the West Highland Way. It's a walk that normally takes a week, but in this race the fastest do it in around 16 hours. We'll see you then. Bye for now.